We'll start off with the gallery view. As soon as you open the app, you can see all your canvases and projects. You can tap on the plus icon to select your canvas from the presets or a custom canvas size. You can select the unit from here and then the width and height and DPI. DPI is basically very important when you want to get it printed. You should have it above 300 and 600, but depending on that, the maximum number of layers would change. Then color profile, RGB if you want to use it for digital purposes only, and CMYK if you want to get it printed again. And these two settings are not to be changed over here. These can be changed later on. That's it. We can change the name and get started. You will have your canvas here also. I usually use the screen size at 300 dpi RGB, and for the Instagram post and other social media platforms you can use square, or if you want to get it printed you can go to A4. You tap on photo if you want to insert a photo as your project or canvas, and you can also import from files. Tap on select to select multiple canvases. You can stack them to arrange them according to the projects, or you can select them and have a preview of all of them like this. Then you can also rename your stack. Let's get inside the interface. So first we have the brushes, then we have the smudge tool, the eraser tool, the layers and the color. So layers are an important part of digital art. The fact that you can zoom in, do undo, redo and use layers makes digital art truly different from traditional, and the basic advantage of it over the traditional art. Both are great and I still do both. And you can add and delete layers. So the benefits of layer is when you do something below the other layer, you can have like layering of the illustration, have different colors on different layers, individual layers. The one that below on the illustration may have it on the layer below it, and they are unchanged and unbothered by whatever you're doing on the other layers. So if I have this textured checkboard layer and I do something on top of it, and even if I delete it, this layer remains as it is. This is most useful when you do the sketch on one layer, and then you can reduce the opacity, do the line art on the other layer, and once you're done with the line art, you can switch off the visibility of the sketch layer using this checkbox, and you can still have the sketch layer intact, but while you're saving your artwork you won't have it visible. So this is one of the major uses. Then you can add color very conveniently. Instead of worrying about going over the lines, add a layer below the line art layer and you can do the color. You can see that the color is below the line art, and you can drop in the colors like this instead of doing it traditionally, or you can also do that both ways based on however it's convenient. You can drop in, tap on this icon and just tap to fill all the line arts together. Now you can zoom in and zoom out the canvas using two fingers, rotate the canvas and zoom in as much as you want for details, pinch for full screen, tap with forefinger to remove all the toolbars and again to show them, two fingers for undo, three fingers for redo instead of going to the button. And you can zoom in and conveniently write or draw whatever you want. And you can see this grid on the canvas. You could either use a textured brush like I've used if you want to include it in the artwork. If you don't want to have it in the final artwork, you can go to Canvas Drawing Guide and have it while you're drawing, and once you save the artwork, it won't show up in the final JPEG or PNG. I usually like to have this textured for a doodle vibe. Now there are different kinds of brushes. You can either have plain, textured, tapered, non-tapered, pressure sensitive, monoline for each of these. I'll show you what each of them means, and you should experiment with all the brushes for different stages. I have a separate video where I show you what brush I use for what kind of stages: sketching, line art, coloring. So a plain brush basically does not have any texture, so you could have smoother brushes for like proper digital art vibe, you can see, and the one I've used to write is like a textured brush. You can have pressure sensitivity for both the thickness and for the opacity. Now this means tapered brush. When you have thinner ends than the overall thickness of the brush, monoline is basically it has the same thickness throughout the entire brush, and you can have a tapered pressure sensitive or monoline brush and non-tapered pressure sensitive or monoline brush. So when you apply lower pressure, the lines are thinner. When you apply more pressure, the lines are thicker. But in monoline brush, irrespective of the pressure, there is no change in the thickness or thinness or the opacity, and you can change that in the Brush Studio. I'll make a separate video of detail on the Brush Studio, but major importance is going under stabilization. The streamline is very important. I suggest you to have it higher for the line art brush brushes and not for the sketching brushes to have the natural feeling of sketching, because this basically smoothens out your line and it has like a magnetic feel, so you have controlled line. You could do the sketch normally in your sketchbook and do the line art and colors on digitally, or you can just play around with the streamline, test and see what you like over here in the canvas and what drawing, adjust it accordingly. And stabilization is even more making it magnetic. I like to keep it very low, but basically this gives your line art a smoother finish, but keep it low for the sketching brush. You can also go with the default brush settings. For the taper, you can adjust it. You can see how I'm changing this. You can do it for both the ends, how the thickness of the tips are changing. Then go to Apple Pencil if you want the size to change with pressure or the opacity to change or increase with the kind of pressure you're applying. These are some of the most important settings. And then the texture and non-texture happens based on the grain of your brush. So whichever grain you have, you don't have to do these settings for each of the brush. Go ahead, experiment and just change the streamline, and the pressure sensitive brush already have these settings. These are basically important when you want to create your own brushes. Now you can change the size of the brush, change different sizes and set sizes for different brushes from here by tapping on the plus icon. And you can also change the opacity so it's kind of transparent. You can see the color below through it based on this slider. Now these were the brushes and the size and opacity sliders. Talking more about layers, you can tap on this checkbox for the visibility of the layer. Long press if you want only one layer to be visible. Change the opacity from here. You can tap on the screen with 2 fingers and then change the opacity. Select multiple layers, make them into a group. You can switch off the visibility of the entire group like the layers. You can use it for animation assist or while getting it printed. And you can delete and duplicate groups, like you can delete and duplicate individual layers. And you also have the option of changing the blend mode of the layer. So when you tap on the N, apart from the opacity, you can change the blend mode, which basically means when you have 2 colors on different layers, how they react. Like you do watercolor, you can see through one color on top of the other. Sometimes color mixed together to form another color. You can experiment with each of these. I'll make a detailed video of each of the blend modes. Basically, which blend mode I use. Basically, this is helpful when you want to add shadows and highlights. You can see different ways how they react, but what I use is soft light and multiply blend mode. The most artists use it for the shadows and highlights. And overlay if you want to add like sunlight vibe. So you can see using a desaturated purplish gray color and multiply blend mode, I add shadows like this, and on top of that in soft light layer using black I add shadows and white I add highlights. So you can see a detailed video about that on my channel. I'll link a playlist with all these videos. Now you can see that once you tap on the layer, you see a lot of different options. That was the lasso and selection tool. We'll talk about that later. You can rename the layer, you can select, copy, fill the layer with one color, you can clear by scrubbing the 3 fingers on the screen also. And you can also just select the layer, set it as reference on layer below, just drop in color and it will only drop inside the line art. Tap on alpha lock or swipe with 2 fingers to activate or inactivate alpha lock. This way whatever you're doing on that layer would only be visible on pre-existing elements or whatever pixels you already have on that layer. Because it's a pixel based program, each stroke is made up of small squares, tiny squares. So that is why I'm saying whatever pixels are there on the layer. Then using the smudge tool, even if I'm smudging, it won't go out of the shape, it will remain within the shape when the alpha lock is on. It's very helpful when you want to do smudging. Similarly, you have all the options for the smudge tool, the same brushes for the eraser tool also. Now you see, if I want to erase the yellow color and don't want to mess with the shape, instead of alpha lock, I would add a new layer on top, use clipping mask, and then whatever I do on the clipping mask again would only be visible to which it's clipped has. So in this way, even if I just want to erase or do changes to the layer above it, the initial shape would not be changed. So this is the difference between clipping mask, alpha lock and layer mask. I have a detailed video about that as well, again would be in the playlist. Now if I want to switch off the layer below the pink layer, I just want the yellow layer to be visible. Because I'm using clipping mask, as soon as I switch off the visibility of the pink layer, even the yellow layer would stop being visible. And so in that case, I would rather use mask if I want totally independent of the base layer and whatever changes I would want to make. So for that, you can select the elements of this layer on a new layer, tap and hit the menu to make a mask. So mask is like a stencil. Imagine putting this mask on the sketchbook, and the white part is where you can see through and the black part is where it's covering the page. So whatever you do on the layer beneath it, the white part and the shape is where it will be visible. These diagonal lines basically shows what all is selected. So everything apart from what's selected gets these lines. Now whatever I'm doing on this layer again would still be visible only where the star is there, and even if I switch off the star, the things that I'm doing on the mask is independent of the star. It's basically just like a stencil. So you can see if I add patterns and remove this, if you want to do something of that sort, you can merge in all the layers by pinching in like this. Now coming to color palette, there are two ways you can display the palettes, either like this or like cards. Then you can go to value and change values like this, but basically the most important part here is the hex code of the color if you want to use a particular color, and you can simply tap on to check the code. This part is where you can use color harmony, and based on the harmony you can select multiple colors and you have all the options here. You can hit the plus icon, you can long press on the screen to pick colors, keep on adding by tapping on over there, delete palettes like this, use an image to create a new palette altogether like this, importing an image as a palette. Then over here I most probably used classic, so if you move from top to bottom or this slider you can change the brightness, and if you move from right to left or this slider you can change the saturation, basically how much gray or how much pigment is there in the color, and the brightness is basically how much white or how much black is there in the color. And similarly you have this disk, this layer is the hue, then again the horizontal and vertical is the brightness and saturation. So I use the slider because you can slowly adjust it in much more controlled way, and this over here is the hue. Then you can see the last used color over here and the recent one. Long press on the color swatch to switch between the last used color and the recent one. You can clear the history, some models do have history. In the background color you can switch it off and you can save it as PNG if you want an image with a transparent background to use it as digital stickers. And make sure that you switch off the background color layer and then only save it as PNG. Then you can tap on it to change the background colors. Even if you save it as PNG and don't switch off the background layer, it won't have transparent background. Now coming to this layer, you can tap on gallery and you can go back to the gallery mode, and this is the stack, so we come back over here. Now to the wrench icon, you first have the add option. You can add in a file, a photo, you can take a photo, or you can add text. So you can just tap on this and insert a photo on the canvas, and by clicking on add text you can use Apple Pencil Scribble to add text or just type it out with the keyboard. And then when you have a separate layer for it, you can edit text, go on this, and you have the fonts, the styles, the size, the kerning, basically the distance between the letters and lines, the outline, underline, all caps, and all these different settings. You can also import fonts and hit done or cancel. Now next we can cut, copy, paste, or copy the canvas. Copy canvas basically means irrespective of the layers, whatever layers are open and whatever you can see on the canvas get copied. You can swipe down with 3 fingers to invoke this copy paste menu. You have cut, copy, paste, duplicate, and you can select and paste. You can see I have this separate layer with the white background since I copied that canvas. And now you can crop and resize canvas even after doing. Hit on this if you want to move it proportionally. You can switch on animation assist using this. So I'll show you a quick small demo. Switch off all the layers you don't want to use in the animation, speed of the layers, and you can see this is like in text animation that you created. So you can create using onion skin basic animations. Then you have page assist, which I don't think a lot of people use. It's basically based on all the groups and layers, they all appear like different pages of a sketchbook. Then we have drawing guide, which I've already told you about. You can also have various different drawing guides. You can have isometric, perspective for perspective drawing, for isometric grids. Then you also have symmetry. So once you have symmetry on, you can hit on any of the layer to switch on drawing assist, and it would have symmetrical effect like this. You can change the opacity, color of these grids and make it horizontally or vertically. Tap on reference if you want to have a reference while drawing, and it will be different separately from the canvas. You can also have your canvas in the reference, so even if you zoomed in the canvas, you have the overall view of the canvas in the reference window itself. You can also get the color palette like this swinging around on the screen. Flip the canvas vertically or horizontally. From here you can have canvas information, the dimensions, the layers left, the color profile you had selected, the video setting, and the statistics of how long it took, stroke, the strokes, the size of the canvas. Then once you come to share, you have different options. You can save it as Procreate or PSD, where all the layers would be intact and everything can be shared and opened in another Procreate app or file. And then you can have it PDF. Once you select PDF, only this particular canvas will have like a one page of PDF. But when you want to have different layers as different pages of PDF, you have to share layers as PDF. Then we have the JPEG. Again, make sure that if you want PNG for transparent or high quality, then you have to switch off the background layer. JPEG is basic image and TIFF is for printing purposes. Then you can share the layers as PDF, PNG files, animation, GIF, etc. Tap over here to see a time lapse of your process. If you don't want to have a time lapse or increase the size of your project, you can switch it off from here. You can export the overall time lapse from here. Then some preferences, the light mode or dark mode, right-handed, left-handed, dynamic brush scaling. It basically means when you're zooming in, the size of the brush would change, it would reduce. But if you don't want that, which is not the most convenient way, I like to keep it on. So irrespective of how much zooming in or zooming out you're doing, the size of the brush would remain the same. So have it on switched on. You can see this round circle. You can have the brush cursor on or off using this and adjust this. It's more useful if you have Apple Pencil hover, etc. More options for that. Then pressure sensitivity and smoothing for overall brushes, and gesture control is basically controlling what gesture to use to invoke different shortcuts. So you can tap on this to invoke quick menu, for example. Long press the quick menu, switch between things for faster process. And all of this is just extra stuff which is not required while doing digital art. You can see it's very self-explanatory. Now you can tap on this wand icon to change the hue and saturation of the layer, and you can use the brush to select a particular thing. Then we have the gradient map. It has nothing to do with gradient. It's basically having all the different colors on the layer would act like this and have similar hue. Then you can have motion blur, Gaussian blur for like a gradient effect, actual gradient effect, Persian blur. Then you can add noise effects, bloom effects, half tone, glitch, like this. So some cool effects to the illustration. Then chromatic abbreviation, so like that red and blue thing, and based on the color. You can also have this liquify for a digital marble water paint. Tap on and long press with the clone tool to create these illustrations like this. Then coming to the lasso tool, so you can tap on this selection tool to move objects on your canvas, very helpful for digital art. Then you can select this to move entire layer. If you want an individual thing, you can use the lasso tool. You can drag on the screen while selecting, even while color drop, to select the threshold. You can use rectangle or ellipse, select one thing, add to move multiple things and select at once. And you can also, using 3-finger swipe down, copy paste and have it on an individual layer. You can tap on this to create a straight line while selecting, and hitting color fill to fill color. The transform tool, when free form, will change the height and width. When uniform, it won't change the height and width. Distort, warp and advanced mesh and all, you can play around with it to add different effects. Again, flipping the canvas or layer horizontally and vertically, rotating it at 45 degrees, fitting it to canvas. You can see and experiment. Since this is a pixel based program, while moving objects it might lead to pixelation, so this menu right here has options of bilinear and near neighbor. The best way is to not increase the size of the illustration once complete. You can do that in the sketch phase itself. Now we also have quick shapes. So when you draw a shape, hold on with Apple Pencil and also tap on the screen, you get a perfect shape and you can change it, and you can have to have multiple attempts. And using these anchor points, you can also further play around with either of these shapes. That goes around with the line also, moving it at particular angle when you type. And this was a quick introduction to Procreate 101 Masterclass sorts for beginners. I hope this was helpful. If it was, don't forget to like this video. I create digital art related and character portrait illustrations related videos. If you use Procreate app or just got an iPad and started using it for digital art, and drawing doodle style character portrait illustrations excites you even with no prior experience, then I have a great news, a very special announcement. Discover the true potential of your iPad. Does any of this sounds familiar? You always wanted to draw face illustrations but find it difficult without tracing pictures. You are able to create following tutorials, but when it comes to creating something original on your own independently from imagination, you feel helpless. Or you wanted to develop your own art style, one that's fun, then let me tell you, I've been there too. And I decided to share my knowledge and 6 years of experience with you all so that you can also get the experience of this fulfilling feeling of creation. Imagine being able to draw Doodle style original character portrait illustrations from imagination on your own in Procreate in your own art style without being dependent on tutorials or the need to trace with hand-drawn vibe yet professional comic style rendering in just 20 days. Too good to be true? Not anymore. I can't believe I'm finally launching the 20-day masterclass by the digital doodler Riam. This is not just any other course. This program is designed to get you results. Instead of wasting time on what needs to be done, focus all your energy in actually doing it and leave the what on us. This program is like a GPS, making sure that the journey to your dream destination is guided and fun-filled with structured, practical steps. Projects at end of modules, you get to practice as well as start building your portfolio during the program itself. The program is designed keeping in mind people from non-arts background also, so no technicalities, and people with busy schedule because this certified program has the best of both worlds. Benefits of studying in a batch while learning at your own pace any time of the day with recorded modules, keeping in mind your busy schedule. Get access to a community of like-minded people from across the world. This is obviously a certified program, and those who are also interested in learning how to create doodle style portrait of people and not just character illustrations, you are lucky because the first few people to enroll will also get a bonus masterclass of creating comic style people portrait, and this is a limited time offer. Dedicated the last 2 years of my life putting this together and making this whole experience wholesome with the ease of access on your mobile apps and your personalized dashboard. Learning to construct the face sketch in different profiles, stylizing facial features, expression and hair, exercise to develop a fun art style true to you, exercise to come up with original concept ideas, drawing from imagination, line art techniques, picking up colors, about adding shading, shadows and highlights to absolutely any illustration, more techniques of drawing from imagination, drawing from briefs and getting started with doodling. I'll be sharing my own process and more is waiting inside the program. The seats are limited. Secure your spot from the link in description for the next available batch if we have seats available by the time you're watching this video. I wish you happy learning. Keep creating.